Hello and good day, Geometry. Back with you again for our double feature. PO48 talking about squares. And it's a PO because look at all the lines that we get to fill out for the characteristics of a square. Okay. Not only is a square a parallelogram, which means that it has the same 5 characteristics as every other parallelogram we've talked about so far, but, folks, because it is a square, it is also both a rhombus and a rectangle, which means that it has every characteristic of a rhombus and every characteristic of a rectangle. Okay, so let's begin. Because a square is a parallelogram, what do we know? What do we know about a square? Simply because it is a part of the parallelogram family. Yes, Colin. Opposite sides congruent. Isn't it nice that these are all key points, too? They fit very nicely on a help sheet, you know? Perfectly. Opposite sides congruent. What else do we know about a square? Simply because it is a parallelogram. Evan. Opposite angles congruent. What else? Christopher. Adjacent angles supplementary. What else? Noah. Opposite sides are parallel. And what else? Christopher. Diagonals bisect each other. Okay. Same properties as both a rhombus and a rectangle. Now, the 5 properties that make a square, different from the other 2, are actually the same properties that make a rhombus, and a rectangle, a rectangle. So there are 3 of them that we wrote down for a rhombus. So I'm going to label the first 3 as, that's not very rhombus-like. Label the first 3 as also a rhombus. I'm really bad at drawing a rhombus. And the other 2 are from the rectangle. Okay. So what were the 3 special characteristics of a rhombus? Going back to PO46 now. See why this one's a PO? Because we cover everything. Okay. Yeah. Don't get a paper cut flipping. No. Okay. All sides congruent. What else is a characteristic of a rhombus but also a square? The other 2 have to do with the diagonals. All angles congruent, that's actually going to be one of the rectangle, and it's going to be the 4 right angles. Because that characteristic is not true for a rhombus. All 4 angles are not congruent. What else? What are the 2 things that are special about a rhombus's diagonals? Evan?
They bisect each pair of opposite angles.
I should say diagonals bisect. Yes, the diagonals bisect each pair of opposite angles. And what's the other diagonal feature of a rhombus? Has to do with where the diagonals intersect. Evan?
The diagonals are perpendicular.
Diagonals are perpendicular. Perpendicular. which means that you've got 4 right angles in the middle of a square. You also have 4 right angles on the outside of a square, right in the corners, because it has that feature of a rectangle as well. And what was the other thing about the diagonals of a rectangle that's different from a rhombus, but is also true about a square? Diagonals congruent. Wow. 10 separate properties that every square has. Some in common with a rhombus, some in common with a rectangle, some in common with both, and all other parallelograms that are out there. It's a pretty fascinating shape. It's in my top 3, not my top 2. My top 3 for sure. Circle, triangle, square. I mean, my least favorite? Never thought about that. I don't know. Yeah, I guess I don't know. All right, let's take a look at what we got going on here. Okay, similar to the rhombus and the rectangle page, I'm giving you a square. This one refers to LK only. Okay, but keep in mind here, since we have a square, we've got right angles all over the place. These diagonals intersect to make right angles in the middle, and we've got our right angles on the outsides or the corners of the square as well. So right triangles abound. Right triangles all over the place. Not only that, but what type of right triangles do we have? 45, 45, 90. Right? Because if these diagonals bisect each right angle that we have in the corner, that's going to leave us with a whole bunch of 45, 45, 90 triangles. Your math packet, number 10, that's due on Thursday for the shaded area section, using 45, 45, 90 triangles is probably the most efficient way to get that shaded section of that cross that's inside the square. So, finding these 6 things, 6 pieces is your homework. And then at the bottom, draw a specific square and rectangle, each with integer side lengths greater than 1 and areas of 16 square units. Which shape has longer diagonals and by how much? By saying draw a specific square and rectangle, you need to draw 2 shapes, 1 square and 1 rectangle, that are labeled. Okay? So what would the side lengths of a square be to get an area of 16 if those side lengths have to be integers, so no decimals, no fractions, and greater than 1? Okay? And then how about for the rectangle? What side lengths would the rectangle need to have for an area of 16 with integer side lengths that are greater than 1? Once you get that, ultimately, I'm asking which shape has the longer diagonals and by how much? You'll need to use some sine, cosine, tangent, or special right triangle knowledge here to answer that question. Okay? Any questions on your homework? Okay. This will be due when we meet live again, which will be next Monday, so you've got ample time to do it, but please do it. Yes?
Are there going to be questions like this last one on the test?
This test is actually fairly involved. It's so the homework that you had for the rhombus, the rectangle, and now the square, where I give you a figure and have you find these pieces of it, your test is going to be the same thing. So you do need to know how to use sine, cosine, tangent, special right triangles, Pythagorean theorem, all these properties. And this test is actually one of the harder ones as far as the multi-step questions. Maybe not this multi-step, but like in the last one where you had to find the cost of painting the area, things like that. Okay, but you can't come into this test saying, "Oh, rectangle, 4 sides, 4 right angles, I got this." No, you need to know all the characteristics about it. Okay, you need more than a kindergartner's knowledge to do well in this test. Okay, all right, that's how you math, folks.